Hello ladies and gentlemen, I had a hard time figuring out how I was going to be able to do this. In all honesty, if I had to admit to what my favorite filmmaker was, someone who's inspired me to do great things, to be creative and always use my imagination, it's gotta be Tim Burton. He's one of those filmmakers that uses his illustrations, uses an animator's standpoint on how to create stories, and it really shows through his movies. There's a lot of humor outside of the spooky elements. I gotta love Tim Burton. Even at his weakest, I still appreciate a lot of the elements of the film, mostly from a visual perspective. For the month of October, I decided to do a retrospective on all the films Tim Burton has directed. I had a hard time figuring out how I was going to pull it off. Was I going to do voiceover style reviews like my Cartoon Palooza shorties, or was I going to make them vlog style reviews? But then I decided maybe if I crossed the two. So I will be speaking freely, but on the other hand, I also put in a lot of research and I'm going to be polishing the videos, adding in more edits than I would for my vlogs. So you'll notice those things come through. Now, as far as what films I will be reviewing, like I mentioned, all the films directed by Tim Burton. However, I won't be reviewing Corpse Bride because I already technically reviewed that movie. And I will not be talking about The Nightmare Before Christmas because, guess what? He did not direct that movie. Henry Selick directed that movie. And I also have plans to talk about that movie in another video in Christmas time. What that video will be called, you will find out later. So, let us begin the Tim Burton movie madness. We start off with Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which, at first, does not sound like a Tim Burton movie. Pee-wee's Big Adventure? Really? But surprisingly, the film works, even as a Tim Burton movie. So you have Paul Reubens' character, Pee-wee Herman, go on an adventure when he loses his cherished bicycle. And as most people know about Pee-wee's Pee-wee's Playhouse, you know that Pee-wee is kind of a man-child. I say kind of, I mean he is a full-out man-child. You feel like he's not necessarily trapped in the body of an adult, but he's still a kid. And while you think that would get annoying, it works because everybody else sort of works with this logic. What I mean specifically is that Pee-wee's not the only crazy character. He's actually considered pretty sane compared to everyone else. I mean, he embarks on this adventure, he comes across hobos and criminals and ghosts. His arch nemesis is this other big man-child named Francis, and it kind of makes his strangeness fit in context to this world. Something else I notice about this film is that, yeah, it's got a Danny Elfman soundtrack. However, unlike most of Danny Elfman's soundtracks, it actually sounds like the Oingo Boingo music that he used to compose. Which I guess makes sense since this is Danny Elfman early on in his career, and his first big collaboration with Tim Burton, to my knowledge. When you think of a filmmaker adapting a comedy routine, this is nothing that's new. This has definitely been done before, and it's still being done today when you look at like the Saturday Night Live movies or the movies that Judd Apatow directs, you know, focusing on the stand-up's comedy routine and putting it into a feature-length film. However, for some weird reason, this is the film that actually works within that context, actually taking what works about Paul Reubens' stick and putting it into a feature-length film. But the one thing I want to drive home with this video in particular that I've noticed is that unlike what most people say about Tim Burton, it's that he is spooky, however, there's humor. And I feel like there's a lot of humor in this film that shows not just in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, but in a lot of his other films. He has a quirky sense of humor. And like I said, it shows in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. As far as recommending this movie, I think you should check it out. Even regardless of you being a Tim Burton fan, it's just a decent comedy. And I mean, if you're into seeing a grown man act like a child, this movie's got it in spades. So again, really enjoyed Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Hope you check it out. And we'll go on to the next video, which is going to be talking about a very iconic Tim Burton movie, Beetlejuice.